You have to have a well-articulated vision. Unleashing the power of botanicals and unlocking the access to CBD is our mission as a company in this industry. And so that is our true north.
America's hemp industry is booming, and it's estimated to triple in size over the next few years. But despite its growth, it remains unregulated and saturated with a wealth of companies competing for attention. By now, you've probably been inundated with ads for CBD. CBD, or cannabinol, is a non-psychoactive extract from the hemp plant. CBD has long been used to treat chronic conditions, but it wasn't until its legalization in 2015 that it became more accessible for wider use. CBD has been known to treat pain, anxiety, depression, seizures, among many other illnesses and ailments. Because of its efficacy, CBD sales have been rising steadily. Today, an estimated 1 in 7 adults have utilized CBD products. One company that's leading the pack in terms of quality, testing, and pushing for better regulation to protect consumers is Charlotte's Web. But Charlotte's Web is more than just a CBD company. It's a brand with its own powerful story. Part of that story starts with Charlotte Figge, who was just 3 months old when she was diagnosed with Dravet syndrome, a form of epilepsy. By the time she was age 5, Charlotte was having 300 seizures per week. That's about 2 every hour. She was restricted to a feeding tube and a wheelchair, and in multiple instances, she was resuscitated after her heart stopped. Having tried all of the conventional medicines, her family reached out to a hemp farmer named Joel Stanley, who could give her one last hope: CBD extract. At the time, it felt like a long shot, but the results were almost immediate. Charlotte began walking. Her feeding tube was removed, and her seizures reduced to only a handful a month. Word spread of the success, and a company formed. Sadly, Charlotte passed away earlier this year at the age of 13, but the life she was able to lead has left a lasting legacy of hope. Today, Charlotte's Web bears her name and leads the CBD industry, helping create access to the treatments that are helping give people back their lives. Joining me today is the woman leading it all, Deanie Elsner, the CEO of Charlotte's Web. She's helping steer the company towards regulation while honoring its namesake. She's fueled by a passion for helping those who rely on their products for a healthier life. Deanie joins me today for a conversation centered on the benefits of CBD, their fight for regulation, and how data is leading them at every step of the way. Let's jump into today's interview with Deanie Elsner, the CEO of Charlotte's Web.
This season of Hidden in Plain Sight is brought to you exclusively by our friends at Splunk, the Data to Everything platform. Splunk helps organizations worldwide turn data into doing. It's time for data to be more than a record of what happened. It's time to make things happen. Learn more at Splunk.com or by clicking the link in our show notes.
Deanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It is exciting to talk to you. And if you're ready, I would love to get to your story and hear, how did you become CEO of Charlotte's Web? What was that evolution like? And then let's jump into more about the products and generally the culture, because I think our culture is changing right now. And we're at this exciting precipice of wellness. So I'll shut up. Deanie, the stage is yours.
Thank you. I'm almost, Chad, the antithesis of what you'd expect to see in a company like Charlotte's Web. My whole career has been spent in big corporate America with Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Kraft Foods, and Kellogg. And that for almost 28 years is how I grew up through marketing, sales, and general management. My last 15 years, I spent within those corporate constructs leading turnarounds, businesses that had hit a wall and needed to be rethought, re-envisioned, and rebuilt. And I really liked that kind of challenge. When I got the call for Charlotte's Web, I was intrigued by the industry. I was intrigued by the opportunity. I knew the story, but didn't know it as intimately as I would have liked to have known it. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I made the jump from a very atypical corporate career into the world of startup and stand-up. And it has not failed to deliver the excitement. It's an industry that's on the edge of enormous growth. We have an opportunity to actually do something really good for the world and really good for consumers. I think there's never been a bigger need for a category like CBD that we've seen. And I'm excited to be at the helm of a company like Charlotte's Web that is really at the forefront of inventing, evolving, and transforming this category. So that's how I got here, and it's in large part why I am here.
Sure. And no offense, but you downplayed some of your former roles. We don't have to go into all of them, but as Chief Marketing Officer of Kraft, or when you're leading Kellogg's $4 billion snack unit with over 1,000 employees, these are very large roles. So I would love to just dive into those a bit more. And if you could kind of share what goes into leading at that level when you have something like food products and where quality is everything, reputation matters. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think you've just absolutely hit it. When you've got brands from those companies, from Kraft Foods, Kellogg's, from Procter & Gamble and J&J, these are brands consumers have grown up with, they trust, and they're enormously loyal to. And so for me, the thrill of that was working in a company where I could see the brands every day when I went to the store shelves, and I knew consumers and family members were enjoying those brands. And so that put an enormous amount of pressure on the leadership in those companies to do the right thing. I think in large part that is the analogy of what's happening today with Charlotte's Web in this category. It's a category that has attracted a lot of competitors because of the enormous growth. And not all those competitors are doing the right thing to put the right products in the marketplace, to have the right consistency, the quality, the safety standards. I think the transferable learnings between these two companies really is the backbone of what ultimately makes a successful company. And that is, you put the consumer first, you put the customer first. They're at the forefront of everything you're doing. And if you do that right, then every single decision you make is in the best interest of the consumer and the customer. That's where there's similarities between these two companies. A lot of companies in this industry today don't have that commitment to doing what's right. They have a commitment to doing what's fastest for them to grow, what's most profitable. And I think for me to make a jump into this industry, it had to be to a company like Charlotte's Web that was investing in its genetics, was investing in its cultivation and in its manufacturing. If you think about Charlotte's Web, we are every single day we move down a spectrum of being farmers, from being extractors, manufacturers, and salespeople of our product. And so we put our brand in front of the consumer every day. We stand behind that brand from a safety, a quality, and a trust standpoint. And that is where the similarities of my background comes to play on this company. That's in the end what it's all about.
And you just described something that's fascinating, so important to bring up when we start talking about this space and CBD, which is quality across every layer of the creation and delivery of the product. So Charlotte's Web is working on everything, like you mentioned, from the genetics to the farming to the direct-to-consumer approach. And when you're going after this kind of full stack approach, everything matters. And I'm sure that there are just thousands of different things to focus on, to improve. How do you determine your focus now? Could you walk us through, what a typical day or quarter looks like for you as CEO?
There's never a day that is the same as any other day. But I think in the end, we are absolutely and relentlessly focused on building the trust with our consumers. And when that is your true north, that is the thing that is driving every one of your decisions, you're going to be making the decisions through the right filter. So for example, we are driving the trust with consumers as we deal with the FDA, and we try to land a regulatory environment that is conducive to opening up distribution and access to CBD. We are driving trust through science. So we've just launched a division of our company called Charlotte's Web Labs, or CW Labs. That group is charged with bringing the science to the forefront that proves the data behind what CBD does for consumers. We're driving trust through driving global and domestic access to this category. We're very active in helping other countries realize the benefits of CBD and want to be at the forefront of when those countries open up with Charlotte's Web. And then honestly, we drive the trust with our consumers every single day through how we manufacture and distribute our products. Our products on average are tested 20 different times throughout our manufacturing, cultivation, and genetic process. And what that means for the consumer is they can trust that this product, bottle to bottle, year to year, is exactly the same, committing on our delivering on our promise. And so when you have that filter of trust, every single action you take every day, regardless of who you are in this company, CEO down to an hourly worker on our floors, you're making the decisions through the right filter, so you keep everybody aligned against the same end goal.
And when you're doing that, I'd imagine, you're entering growth phase now where you're growing very fast. How do you go about keeping that original vision and mission while still evolving, best practices, while experimenting, and especially with everything that's going on? I'd imagine your e-commerce store is doing very well. So walk us through how you keep that original vision and mission alive.
So think about a visual where the filter we operate through is trust. The end goal is delighting the consumer and our customers so that every decision we make is towards that end goal. The next step then becomes building the right team of people who are capable to lead in a consistent way, who have stamina to work through some of the challenges that exist in this industry. Because in the end, I truly believe that Charlotte's Web is and will continue to be the company to place a bet on in this industry. And so when you have leaders who get it, who get the end goal and understand the filter, they lead their groups to continuously improve. And so, an example of that would be recently we announced that we've been awarded with a B Corp certification. We did that. B Corp is a commitment as a company to the marketplace that says, hey, how we act with our employees, with our communities, with our products is as important as the profits we generate. And we're going to commit to acting in a way that's good for the planet and good for the consumer. We didn't have to go down that path, but that path we went down was right because it built on the original vision and mission of this company. And so we announced that at the end of August. This now puts us in a very elite group of companies that give back, that continue to improve our performance in terms of our footprint on the planet, as well as being good for our community and our employees. That came from the leadership that was in place and their commitment to continuously improve. We've also received the first 2 patents in this industry on our genetics. We believe in the power of our genetics. We will continue to improve and deliver better and better genetics to our consumers, but we also want to protect what we have and ensure that what we are putting out there is unique and advantage. Recently, we just acquired a company called Abacus Health Products, and that acquisition expanded our footprint across the topical segment in terms of the over-the-counter topical products, as well into a really important channel called the healthcare practitioner channel, which is where a lot of the medical influence comes in this category. And so having the right leaders, creating this Charlotte's Web to be the company to place a bet on, and having the consistency in terms of what we're all striving for enables us to continuously improve and be the company that people want to bet on. So that really is the framework within which we operate.
Very exciting. And I love the B Corp certification and the fact that you are really, really focused on trying to set the industry standard for all of these practices, because, the 20 times of testing the product is critical to make sure that it's pure for the end user. When it comes to the CBD space, the hemp industry, tell us a little bit about what's going on. Are there some major challenges that consumers or other executives, or maybe folks that are thinking about placing a bet on a CBD company, need to be aware of? Where's the market at right now? Paint a picture for us.
Great question. And it is a question that we continue to receive from the outside, because the expectations for this category were set at such a high level. I'll tell you that there's nothing in this category for us that has changed, not in the least. The long-term bet on this category is in the next 3 to 4 years, this category will triple to quadruple in size just in the US alone. So it's a really attractive category from a growth standpoint. I think the second part of this category is that we fully anticipate that this category will become as popular in the homes of Americans as say aspirin is every single day. Like you could walk into any household in America today and find a bottle of aspirin. We believe CBD has that kind of substitutability and that kind of access across all these different categories of pain management, sleep, as well as inflammation. So we know we've got a category that has tremendous upside. It hasn't manifested itself in terms of growth as quickly as people expected, and that's primarily for one very big reason, and then a secondary reason. The big reason is we don't have a regulatory environment that has been set on this category. And so with the lack of FDA regulations, our customers have been a little bit more gun shy of moving into the category for fear that the FDA will make them an example of what not to do. And so we have this funny chicken or the egg. The category is going to be big. It needs regulatory. Until it gets regulatory, some big customers aren't going to get there, but you still have this gold rush of competitors who are coming in and putting out products that are not only not compliant with the regulatory for a dietary supplement, but aren't good, aren't representing it inside what they are in the label. And so for us, that becomes the biggest challenge in the category, is getting the regulatory set so that we can drive the access through distribution and consumers can adopt this category as a natural alternative to synthetics that they're currently using for conditions that can be helped. So regulatory is the biggest challenge. The pandemic hasn't helped. Having a having a pandemic erupt in an uncertain regulatory environment is almost adding insult to injury. It has reduced the foot traffic to these bricks and mortar stores, and it has reduced some of our customers' willingness to lean forward in a category until they can figure out if they can just supply the essentials to consumers as they are today. And so that hasn't been a help. Thankfully, a big part of our business is e-commerce, and almost 70% of our business today is distributed through e-commerce. And so we are able to still access consumers and grant consumers access to our portfolio through that channel. And as the pandemic eases and consumers have more access, I think you will see this category return to a very robust growth profile going forward.
Definitely. It's been a traumatic time for everyone in different ways. And I think you just hit it on the head that this is going to be a surging category when folks start looking for relief, natural relief that doesn't come with a whole host of unwanted side effects. Something I've heard about is that there still isn't as much peer-reviewed science in this space as there needs to be. So I've looked up, I've gone on PubMed and tried to find some different research. And generally the research on CBD is pretty limited at this point. Could you talk to us a little bit about that? And are there any new cutting edge studies that you like to cite?
You are right. The pandemic is a wake-up call, I think, globally for consumers. And I think coming out of this, we're going to see mental health at the forefront of consumers seeking self-care solutions. And so this category comes to the forefront not just because of everything else it can do, but because of this pandemic and some of the consumer challenges that are going to be raised on the backside of this. You are also correct that the research, because the category is so new, the research on the category has been relatively light. And so there's this desire to get more research to understand, and the race to a category that's developing without any regulatory. So we're trying to figure out how you balance those two things. It's in large part why we launched CW Labs. And the whole purpose for CW Labs is to advance the clinical research side of CBD. And we've got a number of very prestigious academic institutions across the United States, a couple in the Northeast and in the Southeast, and I'll leave it at that for now, we will be partnering with to drive more knowledge in this category. And I'm really very, very, very excited about what we have on the docket from a research standpoint. In addition, CW Labs is going to generate the data that the FDA is so hungry for to understand how CBD acts in your body. And we're partnering with the FDA in helping them get what they need to set the regulatory. So that's the second part of CW Labs. The third part is to develop new innovation and new products that is based on that science. And so while the research has not been as robust to date as we would like it to be, we will be a key part of the influence going forward in driving the clinical, the research, the data, and the foundation to open up this category. And I think stay tuned. There's a lot to come on this front, and very, very excited about how our genetics will play a key part in that research.
Sure. So I'd imagine that the CMO hat is one that you always keep nearby and put on from time to time. So if we're to put that on and think about this from a marketing perspective, how are you thinking about educating folks? How are you thinking about kind of spreading the gospel of the benefits of the plant?
Well, I think the phrase "spreading the gospel" is probably exactly correct. I think this is
a bit overzealous, but it's
a little bit.
From
but
somebody that's used it, it's it feels like you want to do that sometimes.
Yeah, it does. And when you think about, this company has been literally in this business for the last 7 years, and we've gone from a startup to a stand up very quickly. We went from basically zero to almost $100 million in revenues in less than 3 years. So it's incredibly blistering pace in terms of how you grow. But you are right. You can't just assume people are going to understand this category when they've had no experience or very little enlightenment on it. And so from a market share leadership standpoint, we've got a job to do. That job is to educate consumers and customers in terms of what CBD is, what your endocannabinoid system is, how does this product supplement that system, and what does that mean for you long term in terms of how you manage any host of different challenges consumers are dealing with in terms of wellness. And so the way we're doing that is we are providing a lot of educational podcasts and videos. We're partnering with our customers to make sure that their staff in store are knowledgeable about what this is. We've launched a whole new podcast called Searching for Answers. And it literally is a webinar series, which is connecting our experts internally directly with consumers, educating them on a spectrum of topics, from what is CBD to the history of hemp to what's all the hype about, or what's the future and where's all this going. And I think when you can educate consumers and customers, when then they become your ambassadors to educate other people, I think we're in the right space. As a former CMO in this new environment, is this marketing today is not marketing what it was 10 or 15 years ago. Today, brands have lost control of their brand message. How a brand is interpreted, how your reputation is built, is not necessarily built on what you say, but it's built on the experience consumers have with you and how they pass that along to other consumers. It's a very different model. And so that requires brands be authentic. It requires brand consistently deliver against the value proposition they're communicating. And it requires brands stay very close to consumers and evolve with their needs day in and day out. I think that's what I'm most proud about at Charlotte's Web. We've committed to the data infrastructure, the consumer at the forefront, and then reading and reacting to that data, not on a monthly or semi-monthly basis, but on a daily and hourly basis, so that we are getting real-time feedback from consumers, digesting that and determining how we should shift or pivot based on what we're reading in the marketplace. We've brought that to the forefront at Charlotte's Web. I'd love to say it was all me. It's not. I'm usually not the smartest person in the room, but I've done a pretty decent job of building a team of incredibly smart people who know exactly what to go do. And when you put the consumer at the forefront and you have the data and the transparency to act on what you see, that enables us to continue to stay at the forefront of this category.
So cool. And I love the concept of searching for answers. I think that getting all the long tail of those search phrases and being as helpful as possible there when folks are struggling with something critical. So very cool to learn about. Thank you for sharing. Deanie, if we think back about your, 30 years or more of experience here in the space, what's been most challenging throughout your career, and how have you got through some of those challenges? They could be work related, it could be personal, but generally there are a lot of folks right now that are struggling with something. And when they get to hear an executive that has, a multi-decade track record of success, there's usually a thing or two there that the executive knows. And I would love to just kind of drill down on your experience there. So what's your experience been, and how have you gotten through some rough challenges?
Yeah, I literally just said, I can guarantee you I'm never the smartest person in the room. And I think for a long time, I would look forward in my career and think, oh my gosh, look at that executive and look at that executive and think, oh, I'll never be as smart as that person is. And the reality is you don't have to be as smart as that person is. Because if you think about your job, I would contend in leading this company is I've got to be the coach. From time to time, I've got to be the quarterback. And for time to time, and if I'm doing my job really well, I'm spending the most of my time being a cheerleader. And I'll unpack that, Chad, for you a little bit, because I think this is really important and will demonstrate that anybody can do what I'm doing. Your requirement as a leader and as coach is to determine what's the destination you're driving towards and what's the strategic framework within which you're driving. If you get that right, you know that whether you're leading a team of 10 people, 1,000 people, or 10,000 people, everybody's at least going in the right direction. That's really an important piece. And so that's the first part of being a coach. I think the second part of being a coach is building the best team you can build. And what I have found in building teams is you've got to get people who are functionally capable and highly effective in their area, whether it's finance, R&D, whether it's sales, marketing. You need the best and most capable people, but they've also got to be business people. And what's important in building that team is that you get a diverse group of people together who are willing to stand alone and defend a position or challenge the thinking in a position that's been advanced. And so I love to build teams that are stylistically diverse, culturally diverse, and diverse from a gender standpoint, because I think only then do you have people who look at a problem from a different lens that you get the best out of that team. And so I guess that's the third piece of advice I'd give if you're going to go after a position like this is be a really good team builder and developer, because I think in the end, if you get the right people in place and they are going in the right direction and they're leading their teams in a way that's best for the business, your job is done. I think then you've got to be smart about the risks that you're willing to take and encouraging others to take risks. Now, that's a funny thing about risk. People are either risk averse or they're prone to risk. But if you know where you're going and the strategic framework we're operating within, you've got the right leaders. Risks are not big risks. They're just a larger step in the direction that you need to go. Right. And then finally, I think it's all about being a cheerleader. If you've got the right people in place and people know where you're going, then your job as a leader is to get the heck out of the way and let people do what you've hired them to do. And when the bullets fly and the criticism comes, stand in front of those leaders, defend them. And when the accolades come, stand behind them and let them take the credit. I mean, this is very basic human things, but I think when you unpack an executive's job like that, you realize that any Tom, Dick, or Harry couldn't do it if you're smart about where you're going, building the right team, taking the right risks, and then letting people do what they're committing to do. And I think I am really quite excited about my experience. I've loved every part of this, although some parts of it have challenged me beyond anything I would have anticipated. But what I'm most proud of is those teams of people that I've participated in and partnered with. Those are people that I can call today for help. I can try to bring them into jobs and they're willing to come into those jobs. And those are people that I continue to be a mentor to, and they of me. And I think that's the best part of this, because these are relationships that last forever. And I think that in the end is your job, to make yourself redundant so that your team is running this whole thing without you.
It's been said that you can have a culture of policing or you can have a culture based on cheerleading. And I think you hit the nail on the head. People prefer the cheerleading any day of the week. That's been my experience, and life is too short to stick with the policing culture. So shifting gears a little bit, I would be very interested to hear about how have you use data, big data throughout the years. So it's obviously, the promise of data it's been touted out as a buzzword multiple times over the last decade. I'm just interested to know, how has the use of data evolved in your career?
It is a great question, because it has almost been about a decade where I've partnered with teams to figure out data. And it really came on the cusp of Barack Obama's election to the presidency. And I don't know if you're going to remember, but there was a Newsweek article written about big data and how important data became to the Democratic National Convention, because they really looked at who would be the most influential voting bloc to get to an election. And they realized it wasn't the committed Democrats or the uncommitted Republicans. It was these independents in the middle, and understanding them better than anybody else and ensuring that their needs were met would ensure that swing vote would go towards the Democrats. And so we became really quite obsessed with, if a presidential campaign can utilize data to get to consumers in a better way, it has to be available to us. And literally in 2010, I was part of a group that began to look at how we could use data to make better decisions. That moved into the CMO job at Kraft, where Kraft sat on a ton of data, and we began to build the infrastructure around it so we could understand what it meant and begin to let it guide our decisions. I took that to Kellogg, did the same things, and we turned around the snacks business at Kellogg, which was the $4 billion business, and that has been at the forefront of Charlotte's Web. It becomes so important because consumers don't always tell you what they're thinking, but their behaviors tell you what they're thinking. And so a big part of our push at Charlotte's Web is to put data and data transparency at the forefront of our company, whether it is understanding consumers' data so we can get to better insights, or understanding the superior analytics so that we can drive better innovation or product evolution decisions. We're using data to provide better insight to how we run our supply chain team, or how we harness insights around driving new innovation. And so every part of our business has been built on one of the three legs of the stool, which is get data transparency and then use data to drive how you make decisions. And it's in large part why our e-commerce business in terms of growth has accelerated. If you look at our e-commerce business, if it were a standalone business today, it would be the second biggest CBD business in the United States behind Charlotte's Web. It would be bigger than any other competitor today, just one channel that we have. Wow. And so it really becomes important that you know your consumer better, you know your customer better, and you fulfill their needs by delighting them in a way that nobody else can do it. And so for us, data is make or break, and we've placed a bet on building a data infrastructure that can drive all of our decisions.
Very exciting times. And, you mentioned that acquisition earlier, and I would love to talk with you a bit about innovation, because I think that's an important part of, e-commerce, as you mentioned, is just one channel. And now you have this channel where you have the potential for physician referrals and recommendations. Tell us a little bit about that channel you're building, and then maybe others, so people can kind of grasp just how many channels there are for this business to grow into.
Yeah, the Abacus Health Products acquisition was a strategic decision for us. And it was strategic because it filled a gap in our portfolio that we could not have filled ourselves so quickly. With Abacus, we were able to bring in a significant topical product line that we didn't have access to. Abacus positions their products with FDA monograph ingredients, which enables them to talk about conditions with consumers. Those conditions, the FDA would say, are claims unless you've got the ingredient stream that they say are necessary to be making those positionings in the marketplace. So Abacus for us expanded our product portfolio. To your question, it also expanded our position in a really important channel called the healthcare practitioner channel. Abacus has over 16,000 different healthcare practitioner groups they work with through this channel. And so 75% of their revenue is distributed through the healthcare practitioner channel, or HCP as we call it. And that channel then becomes influencers. If your products work the way they should, those folks in those channels are ambassadors and influencers to other consumers who are coming into this category. Now, we know a big part, about half of consumers come into this category through referrals from the healthcare practitioner channel. And so for us, strategically, it was important for us to be in that channel. We now are the only CBD company in North America who is distributed across every single channel for CBD. So whether it's the food, drug, and mass channel, or e-commerce, whether it's the healthcare practitioner channel or the natural channel, we have a footprint in all those channels, in addition to having a footprint in every single segment that CBD is distributed today. And so we're uniquely advantaged in having that scale across. Now we've got to figure out the right portfolio across each of those channels, and then the innovation stream behind those that meets the consumer's needs in those channels uniquely. And so that's what you'll see us go to next, is developing our portfolio so that we have a differentiated portfolio by channel within each segment, so that when consumers who go to healthcare practitioners versus, CVS or Walgreens, they're getting a product line that is meant to meet the needs of that consumer in that channel. That gives us tremendous strength in the marketplace, because then we're adapting our portfolio to meet the consumers uniquely. And that's a value exchange for us that enables us to delight and drive loyalty with consumers.
Sure. And when it comes to, getting back to data, how are you going about collecting, using, or implementing data with your products, with your teams, with your innovation pipeline? Whether there's a story or a specific example you'd like to talk about, I'm always curious to know how are leaders using data to lobby for a decision, or maybe to champion someone else's initiative.
Yeah, it's a great point, because this idea of big data, what the heck do you do with it, and how do you build it to better position your portfolio? And so the way we're using the data is, I think the most exciting way is through innovation. And I think as we step back, we look at different conditions and challenges with those conditions. We literally ingest data from scientific periodicals, from research that's out there, from consumer buying behaviors, from future supplement consumption data that we were able to get our hands on. We ingest all of that data, and then we're able to do significant analysis on that to begin to identify emerging opportunities to drive new products. So this is a silly example, but it has proven to be enormously beneficial to our company. As we were developing our new product pipeline that we were launching mid-year last year, we saw that in the vitamin supplement category, really quite a big and continued emerging trend in the world of gummies. And we knew, in terms of forms, a lot of consumers who will be coming into this category, taking an oil-based tincture is a little bit of an atypical behavior. And so we were trying to find a way to build a format that was more consistent with consumers and how they would take other supplements like vitamins. Gummies became interesting. Then we stepped back and we looked at the science of other botanicals in the category that were getting after some of the similar need states. And we found natural botanicals that would partner really well with CBD, so that we could position our gummy line against very specific need states like sleep, calm, recovery. So consumers understood how to consume that product. They got the benefit of other botanicals that were natural alternatives combined with CBD, and it was being delivered in a format that was continuing to be at the forefront of the vitamin supplement category. So that's an example of how we ingested all this data, stepped back, and got to innovation that drove a differentiated position in the marketplace. Gummies today represents almost 30% of our portfolio. That's in less than a year.
Wow.
It's a significant amount of our portfolio. And so now as we look forward, we look to continue to transform and evolve that portfolio. That's an example of really taking marketplace data, taking scientific data, taking data in terms of what other botanicals can do and can help drive a differentiated position in the market with innovation that then benefits the company and benefits the consumer. And so it's probably a fun example of what we saw. Another example quickly is our pet food launch. Similar to our gummies, we launched an expanded pet portfolio. What we were finding was consumers who came into our brand portfolio through the pet category were actually seeing how efficacious those products were with their animals, their dogs, and then came into the category as a human and went after our human-based products. And so we expanded our pet line so that we could better meet the needs of pet owners, knowing that was an entry point for consumers into our human-based consumption part of our portfolio. And so for us, data becomes critical because it's the insights that help drive our actions. And then the filter is delighting the consumer and the customer. It's the magic formula that enables us to succeed.
Deanie, when we think about the future of CBD, of wellness, I'd like to just take a step back and think about like the next 10 years. You mentioned the example with the goal of being as ubiquitous as aspirin. I think that is so cool. And if I think about the trends that are happening all around us, whether it's CBD showing up in more and more foods and beverages, it seems like this is just the cusp of a larger wellness wave that we're kind of all collectively surfing on. So walk us through the future, walk us through that landscape, and how does Charlotte's Web go from where you're at now to being a part of every American home and beyond?
It's a great question, Chad. I think that I would say that it's a little consistent with what I've said. I think what Charlotte's Web has to do and what you have to do to succeed in this category is you have to have a well-articulated vision and mission. And you have to have that because it acts as your true north. We truly believe that botanicals, unleashing the power of botanicals and unlocking the access to CBD is not only our mission, but it's our job as a company in this industry. And so that is our true north. And we will continue to find ways to drive access through distribution as well as innovation to meet the needs of consumers. And I think that's the first part. Have a vision and mission that acts as your true north so that the entire company knows where you're going. I think second for us will be to develop a true point of difference in the market that uniquely advantages you so that you can build an incredibly loyal consumer set. And I think one of the biggest benefits Charlotte's Web has is not only are we the highest in terms of consumer awareness, but we're the highest in terms of loyalty and consumers willing to recommend you. We're doing that based on data, science, and genetics. And when you have that going in, it enables you to position yourself uniquely in the marketplace that drives your innovation. I think that's the second part of what we're doing is just we are bringing enormous rigor to data science and genetics to continue to evolve and delight the consumer. I think the last part for me is, and this is really important, build a team of people who are functionally strong, but business people first, and then get the hell out of their way and let them do their job. And if you've been clear about where you're going and you're clear about how it is you want to operate, people come to work every day wanting to be part of the solution and wanting to be part of a successful team, something bigger than themselves. And if you can do that third thing and do it right, then you're going to have a loyal group of people who will break down walls to enable you to succeed. And I think that's it. Create an environment where there's, I think, constructive tension with people who will stand alone, who will land the best decision, align, and then ultimately execute. So for me, that's kind of the framework of what we have to do going forward to continue to lead in this category. And I would contend any company in any industry has to do in order to succeed in this new environment.
Amazing. Deanie, it's been a pleasure having you on. I'm a big fan of Charlotte's Web. I'm a user of the products and can't speak highly enough of the company. We've been fortunate to have your CIO on one of our shows, and the interactions with you and your team have been amazing. So thank you for the time. And is there any final call to action, final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Absolutely. I'll never miss an opportunity to try to evoke movement. I think we're going to come out of this pandemic and there is going to be an awakening to wellness and self-care unlike anything we've ever encountered before as a planet. People are going to be motivated to figure out how to do better for themselves in terms of what they eat, what they take, how they exercise, how they build the best self they can be to tackle whatever pandemic is in front of us. And I think that is going to be a wake-up call for this category. And so I would encourage your listeners to get on the phone with their legislators to influence those regulators. The fact that we don't have a regulatory environment today that provides access to consumers from a wellness standpoint for this category is a travesty. Consumers deserve it. Companies can deliver against it. And now we need a regulatory environment that helps frame out how we all should act. We will be hugely advantaged if the FDA sets regulatory requirements that raise the bar on performance, on quality, on consistency, and on companies doing what's right every day to protect the safety of consumers. So if there's one thing I want to leave you with, sincerely call your legislator and demand that we pass regulatory on access to CBD and regulations around which how companies perform within this industry. And if we can get safety and quality measures raised, it's going to be better for every single consumer, customer, and company in this industry. So that's what I'd leave you with. And thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks so much. And to everyone listening, we'll see you next time.
I'm Sophia Bush, and you've been listening to Hidden in Plain Sight from Mission.org. This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Splunk, the Data to Everything platform. In today's data-driven world, every company, big or small, new or old, is sitting on terabytes of unused, untapped, and unknown data. Splunk helps turn all that data into action. Using cutting-edge AI and machine learning, Splunk delivers real-time predictive insights that will help you on your mission to change the world. With solutions for IT, security, Internet of Things, and business operations, Splunk empowers people to make faster, better decisions and take action to get things done. It's time for our data to be more than a record of what happened. It's time to make things happen.